everybody galore. Facing life head on, blowing fresh at the door. No limits, all in it, yeah, be ready to soar. Every step that I take, every move that I make, anticipating, no more waiting, elevating the stakes. I'm full stride, eyes open, captivating the scene. True life, my time, liberating my dreams. Every challenge that I'm seeking to meet, I'm overcoming, steady grinding, keep my beat to the street. I keep my mind thinking wise, hoping better to keep. Rising high, go get it with the vision I see. I'm getting clever, yeah. Special deliveries out. Special deliveries out. I'm on the way. I'm on that midday hustle and I'm hitting my stride. Clock ticking, never missing, no reason to hide. City passing while I'm moving, then I'm taking it in. Hitting every door, crashing, and I'm wearing a grin. Through this alleyway, stuck in, navigating the wake. Every package is a hustle, I'm wide and awake. No slowing, improving, making these cakes moving. Thrill with the take, ooh, with the thrill I create. Damn, it's a plan, no overstand, I'm free in my zone. Drop hit, pick it up, lose full control. Don't mind if I splash while I'm making these waves. Life like a knife, baby, and I'm cutting my way, I'm better.
In school, kids.
Dear Love Harriet. The incomparable Dear Love Harriet. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Elena. I'm going. So we can get started. I want to first thank our amazing performers. I'm crying. If any of you have plans to see MJ the musical, Antoine L. Smith, who you just saw sing so beautifully, plays Barry Gordy. So please give him a huge round of applause. I'm still crying. He was joined by D. Love Harriet, who was the musical director for the award-winning show For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough. A round of applause for her as well. Amazing. What a wonderful way to start off Climate Week, the Monday of Climate Week. So happy Climate Week. Happy fall. Shana Tova to you all. I'm Danny Nierenberg. I am president and co-founder of Food Tank with Bernard Pollock. For those of you who don't know, Food Tank is a research and advocacy organization really devoted to highlighting stories of hope and success in our food and agriculture systems. We do this with the aim to inspire, motivate, and ultimately activate positive transformation in how we produce and consume food. I am so excited to be here at Climate Week again. Across our 15 summits, we are bringing together 300 farmers, policymakers, journalists, food and agriculture activists, along with artists and performers to help talk about the intersection of food, farming, and the climate crisis. We finally are understanding, I think, that agriculture can be the solution to some of our most pressing problems, and that we can only solve the climate crisis if our food and agriculture systems are designed to be nourishing, regenerative, and just. Today, we are coming together to show what powerful climate solutions we can unlock when we tackle food waste. So let me just share some stats with you. The UN Environment Program, who's joining us today, estimates that every year we throw away more than $1 trillion worth of food. When that food decomposes, it contributes to 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And it's not just the food that we're wasting. It's the land, water, energy, time, labor, and love that goes into making that food. And food waste is not just a climate or environmental issue. It's a moral one. There are at least 700 million people in the world who experienced hunger last year, and that number is likely rising due to activities that have happened this year under the Trump-Vance administration. And as Congressmember Shelley Pingree said, you'll hear from her later today, it's unconscionable that we are throwing food away when so many people in the world aren't sure whether they'll have enough to eat. But there are solutions that can help cut greenhouse gas emissions, nourish our communities, and ensure that we are truly valuing the food and the people who grow, harvest, cook, serve, transport it, and sell it, and dispose of it. We have technology that helps culinary teams in restaurants and hotels accurately measure and act on food waste. There's legislation and policies being passed that help eaters understand date labels so they don't throw away food while it is still good. And organizations in cities and towns and villages around the world are collecting surplus food and redistributing it to those who are in need. I want to give a huge thanks to the UN Environment Program, especially Laura Fuller and Georgia Patronello. Thanks to Apeel Sciences, especially Jenny Du. Thanks to the American Frozen Food Institute, including Alison Bodor and Jenny Norca. Thanks to ReFed, especially Jeffrey Constantino and Jacqueline Chi. And a big thanks to FlashFood, especially Esther Cohen. Please give those partners a big round of applause. They're amazing. They're amazing to work with. I also want to thank our hosts here at WNYC, including Ryan Wild and Chase Colvin. Give them a round of applause. It's a great venue. And I want us to give a round of applause to our culinary partner, Great Performances, especially Liz Newmark. She's an amazing woman who has really led on sustainability and catering in New York City. Please give her a round of applause. And I hope you enjoyed the nice breakfast that Great Performances made for us. There's more food coming, so you can't leave. Before we dive into conversations, let me just do a little bit of housekeeping. The conversations you'll hear today will be fast-paced and dynamic. If I cut someone, off, or if I cut a panel short, please forgive me later. There will be time during lunch to have more conversations, and I expect many of you are here all week, so you'll find time to talk to folks. And I also hope that everyone will share their favorite moments or things that they didn't like using the hashtag Climate Week NYC. You can also email me directly at Danielle@foodtank.com, and I will try to get back to you in real time. I have my phone somewhere. So now let me introduce our co-hosts helping kick off the event. We have Luiz Beling, the CEO of Apeel Sciences, and Jamil Ahmed, the director of the New York office for the UN Environment Program. Give them a round of applause. Gentlemen, I'm so glad you could be with us today. Thank you for your partnership and collaboration. It's been a pleasure. I'm wondering if we can start off by talking about the growing awareness of the link between food and climate. What does the attention that food waste is receiving at Climate Week mean to you?
Yeah, I can start. It's just a pleasure to be here, actually. And if you think about, you can't really talk about climate change without talking about food waste, right? And what it really means. If you think about the effort to grow a crop, and I've spent 25 years of my life in agriculture, to grow a crop from the farm and to get that crop into our table takes a lot of effort, a lot of investment. And to see, a third go to waste, or to see 50%, if you talk about fresh produce, goes to waste, you cannot talk about climate change and its impact on, greenhouse emissions without really tackling one of the biggest problems with food waste. So it means a lot to us, and it means a lot to the work that Apeel is doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning to all of you. I think, just as my colleague has mentioned, we cannot look at it in isolation. And if you look at the Sustainable Development Agenda and the SDGs, they are all linked. So climate change is at the center of many problems that we face today. And food waste is directly linked to it because we are water stressed. Many countries today are water stressed, and a lot of water goes into agriculture and food production. Then you just talked about people who go hungry. And then again, after COVID and the pandemic, we have seen a rise in poverty throughout the world. On the one hand, we have enough food. On the other hand, we are wasting it.
Right.
And there are hungry people in millions. So it's all a very complicated but very interlinked problem, linked to pesticides, linked to biodiversity loss, linked to water stress, and of course, waste is an issue in itself, whether that is food waste or any other waste.
Absolutely.
And I cannot stop by mentioning plastic waste, which is closely related to agriculture sector now, especially we use a lot of plastic in agriculture.
We're going to talk about that later today, too. So we're less than 2 months away from the climate change conference, COP30, in Brazil. What is top of mind when we're talking about food loss and food waste for you both? What do you want people to know going into COP, and what do you want them to take out of it? What kind of actions should they take out of it?
Yeah, I'll start with just, I think talking about the problem, it's one step, but I think really talking about what technologies are available to solve some of the problems is what I'm really looking forward to. So if you think about it, there's a lot of technologies, and we're going to hear a lot about them actually this week here, that are actually being deployed at large scale to tackle some of the problems. Right. So getting into some of the solutions and the partnership across, the private sector, the public sector, NGOs and multiple stakeholders to tackle this problem is what I'm excited about.
That's great.
Right, so the COP30 meeting this year later in Beling in Brazil is been dubbed as the COP of implementation. We have had so many COPs. Every year we have a COP and each has a focus. This one will focus on how we can implement the plans and the policies that countries have developed. And for that purpose, the nationally determined contribution, or the NDCs as they are called, are the plans of each government that are parties to the Paris Convention to explain and to lay out a framework for implementing those policies. We will look to how countries co-opt and integrate agriculture and food into their nationally determined contributions, because it has to be a whole of society approach. You cannot say that we have to mitigate this sector and we have to adopt that sector. We have to bring agriculture, we have to bring farming, we have to bring livestock. All these issues which are related will have to be part of the NDCs, and that is what the Secretary General is also trying to do. He has convened a high-level meeting on the 24th, where he's going to try to impress upon the leaders of the world to work together for the climate action as a whole, but also for making the NDCs more comprehensive and more ambitious.
Absolutely. That whole of society approach that you mentioned, the private sector has to be a huge part of that, especially when we're lacking leadership in other sectors, especially here in the United States at the federal level. I wonder if you can both talk about what that means. The private sector is really stepping up with Apeel and so many other companies taking on innovation. Yeah,
if you think about the investments are necessary, right? So the both private and public. But if you think about just using Apeel as an example, today, in order to treat, a crop after it's been harvested, we rely a lot about, refrigeration, synthetic pesticides, synthetic waxes, and even single-use plastic. And Apeel actually was able to develop a plant-based coating that uses ingredients naturally found in the fruit itself, in the peels, in the seeds, and the pulps of the food, extract those and then put it back into the fruits and vegetables to give that extra protection. And by doing that, we were able to extend several days, if not weeks, on some produce, which gives the entire supply chain a lot more time to be able to commercialize and reduce food waste. So investments like that is very important to the sustainability. And if you think about it, we produce enough food. There's a lot of discussion about more production. I think if we actually focus on reducing the waste, we don't have to actually explore the earth as much to try to get that extra production. We can use what's already being produced, and I think that's I think what the private sector can do.
Sure. Jamil, how does UNEP work with the private sector?
Well, we have, first let me just say the private sector has a very important role in all the work that the UN does at every level and in every field. In UNEP also, we take private sector in partnerships in many of our areas of work, whether that is chemicals, whether that is biodiversity, and all other work that we do, including the outreach and advocacy. So we value them as a good partners, and we take a broader approach to participating and partnering with private sector in all areas of our work.
That's great. In this final minute we have left, you each have 30 seconds to give this audience a call to action. Luiz.
Yeah, get engaged, right? And I think most importantly, really help think about the technologies that are available and how they can actually be deployed. Because I think get engaged, talk about the problem, but most importantly, share some of the solutions and participate in being part of those solutions, I think is really important. I want you to really take pride. This week is a very important week because I think we spend time talking about how do we solve those problems with the technology, not just about the product itself. So get engaged.
Great. Jamil.
Yes, so I agree with him 100%, but I say that every week is important because not only this one, the week coming up is more important. We are losing time, we are short of time, we don't have time to wait and see what we can do. We have to do it now and here. And for that, one of the big problems is that we are becoming a wasteful society. We are becoming wasteful as individuals, as corporations, as organizations, and as society. We have to see how we can change our behavior by doing more with less and by trying to think of those who don't have anything.
Absolutely. Every week matters. Please give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you for being incredible partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you so much. Round of applause as they leave, please. I am now really, really excited to introduce somebody I have known for a long time, and she's another one of our partners for this summit, Dana Gunders, the president of ReFed. She won the Heinz Award last week, and it's making me cry to think about it because she's been so phenomenal in increasing awareness around food loss and food waste. Please give her a round of applause. Thank you for being here. Congratulations again. Can you talk about what that means for, the food waste movement that you've been recognized?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Heinz Award for the environment looks at the whole environment field, right? So for me, I mean, it's a complete honor personally, but it's also incredible to see the topic of food waste rising to the top of an award that's looking across the entire environment field.
Great.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. I'm so excited for you. I'm hoping you can also give this audience a picture of sort of what food waste looks like in the United States right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of hope, frankly. We're not seeing it all in the numbers. So certainly, we still estimate we're wasting about a third of the food. But we haven't seen the numbers go up. It's been I started working on this back, in the last decade plus, and really we started tracking it as of 2016, and we saw the numbers kind of creep up. And around 2019, we saw it flatten out, dip during the pandemic, come up a little bit, but now we're a couple percentage points lower, about even with where we were in 2016. So that's not great news. It's nowhere near the 2030 goal of cutting it in half. But I will say, I feel like we've reached peak waste and are, getting over the crest and kind of heading back down.
That is really good news. You talked about sort of the last, decade, 15 years that people like you have been working on this issue. And awareness has grown really substantially. Like, a lot of people understand this issue, people who didn't, understand that they were wasting food and wasting money before. Are you seeing the action behind you? So we have the awareness. Are you seeing the action politically to really help make sure that we don't continue to waste food?
Yeah, I think the remarkable thing about this topic is that it solves so many problems. And when you solve that many problems, kind of there's something in it for everyone. And we're really seeing that with this administration. I mean, this is honestly truly turning out when this administration we're in the fourth administration now that has supported this topic. And, we didn't quite know. And I was a little bit faking it till I make it when I said, I think this could be a really great topic for this administration. But since the administration changed over, we've seen the USDA take steps with school food. We've seen EPA just a couple weeks ago launch a Feed It Onward initiative. Sure. We've seen the Food Date Labeling Act reintroduced into Senate with a bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate, something we've never had before.
That deserves a round of applause, everyone.
Yeah. We were really excited. Senator Scott from Florida came on as a Senate co-sponsor this year, and that was a really big deal. And I think it just points to the fact that, look, we can save people money. Food costs are high. Well, let's help people stretch their food budgets, right? Landfills are filling up. They're really expensive to build. They're really hard to site. Let's get as much as we can out of our landfills by getting food out of it. So there are a lot of great benefits that serve the interests of this administration as well.
That's great to hear, and that gives me a lot of hope. Thank you. You mentioned high food costs for consumers right now, and along with extreme weather events and tariffs and everything else, do you think that's going to have an impact on food waste? Will people waste less because food costs more?
Okay, so this is a fascinating topic that we're really trying to dig into, and I'll be curious what the consumer panel later has to say. But what our numbers have shown is that as prices have gone up, household waste has actually increased a little bit, which is really surprising to us. And our best guess is that people are just not seeing wasting less as a strategy to address food prices yet. But there's an opportunity there, right? Because of course people care. They're doing other things. They're switching to, away from premium brands to the house brand. They're buying in bulk. They're shopping promotions. If we can add some strategies about, hey, when you plan your meals and use a shopping list, you save 10%, that sort of stuff. I think there's a real opportunity to help adjust habits as people are rethinking some of the way they shop and cook.
We're going to be talking about nudges later with Michael Grunwald. What kind of nudges are needed, by nonprofits and others to nudge people towards those actions that you talked about? How can they reduce food waste in their own homes?
Yeah, well, I mean, as a messaging, I think it's really about messaging the opportunity. In terms of exactly what, I think it's about picking the easiest things first. So, throw food in your freezer. I always say throw your leftovers in your freezer after one day, because let's be honest, how much are you really eating after day 2, right? But you'll be psyched to have them a couple weeks later. It's about understanding the date labels on food, that they don't mean you need to throw the food out. They're not saying the food is bad. There's nothing you have to do there, right? It's just getting that word out. It's about shopping your fridge before you go shop again. And I think it's really let's make this easy. In fact, people kind of love this topic, interestingly. There's a lot of tips and tricks and recipes and things like that. And so
TikTok's all over it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's kind of keeping it fun, keeping it positive, and painting the opportunity.
That's great. You mentioned what's happening at the federal level with the Trump-Vance administration. What are states doing on food loss and food waste that is exciting to you?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we have seen more and more states passing food waste diversion policies. So that's either outright banning food from their landfills or a goal to have 75% of food not make it into landfills, something. And And in some cases, like California, and actually here in New York to a certain extent, even kind of encouraging or requiring food donation. So even when food, first of all, you get food out of landfills today and you're saving methane emissions, within the year, right? It is one of the most immediate solutions that we can be doing right now. And I think that's really motivating and really exciting. And we're seeing some of those laws work. Vermont has reported a 13% reduction in food in their landfills. Massachusetts has also showed some really great results. Sometimes even when they're not mandating it, just having those laws in place is leading to increased food donations. It's adding jobs because of, kind of standing up a whole industry to be collecting these food scraps and recycling them. So we're seeing some great results. We now have 11 states plus DC that have passed some sort of legislation. Maine, I know Representative Pingree, I don't know if she's here yet, but her state is the most recent to pass it. And so that's exciting. We're also seeing some stuff happen in other places locally, right? So you have in Central Ohio, for instance, you have the Solid Waste Authority there who has run grants for innovation programs. They're doing their own local consumer campaign. There's a lot of innovation happening at that local level. That's exciting. Right here in New York, they have rolled out this commercial waste zone, biggest composting program in the country here in New York City, rolling out. They have now zoned the city, and the carters have to offer waste reduction. They have to offer composting. They also have to offer waste assessments, free waste assessments. And so that's really interesting as well. So I would say state, but local policy is pretty exciting too.
Selfishly, can you talk what's happening in Baltimore since I live there?
Oh gosh, well, Maryland is a state that did pass one of those laws. I think Baltimore has been really active. They are doing a lot with the schools there, which is exciting because, as we all know, it all starts with the kids. And they, I believe, are rolling out composting. Oh gosh, you're gonna have to tell me that as well.
I think it's in the works.
Yeah.
But and that's what I'm trying to get at. How can we help? I feel like it's easy for Massachusetts. Maybe that I'm wrong, but it feels easy for Massachusetts to do this. It's not always easy for cities like Baltimore that don't. They're losing population. There's a lot of folks who are out of work. How can we encourage the not so obvious places to take on the issue of food loss and waste?
Well, I think for any local government to step back and realize that this is really about kind of maximizing food in your city, and that solves a lot of problems at once, right? If you have a food insecurity problem, it can help provide additional food into the emergency food system. If you have a landfill problem, it can help extend your landfill. If you have a climate goals, it can help address your climate goals. So I think really messaging that it's possible, but then giving them the what. Because I think the real thing about this issue is that nobody wakes up wanting to waste food.
No.
Right?
No.
Nobody's in support. That's a great thing we have going for us. But the big challenge is, what do you do? And, at ReFed, we really focus on trying to spell out what the solutions are. And I think it's about demonstrating them. So there are, at the local government, there are cities that are doing great things, and businesses, there are businesses. I think you have IKEA here speaking later today. I mean, they are just really showing the world what's possible. So I think it's about demonstrating. Then it's about scaling, right? Once you demonstrate, it's about scaling. And then it's about sharing because, momentum, everyone wants something positive to jump onto right now, right? We want to build momentum. And the way you do that is to share what's working and show people what's possible and give them something that's in their control that they can go do. And I think if everyone looks at their own sphere of influence and does just that, we'll be much further along.
Absolutely. I love that you've mentioned, the opportunity that there is to solve food loss and food waste and the sharing of knowledge. Can you talk about ReFed's database? Because there's so many solutions in it. What's your favorite? It's like picking your favorite kid, and I know you can't do that, but what's a favorite solution in the database?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm a little bit obsessed with portion sizes. I will admit, especially right here in our home country. So that's, I'm going to say it's a fixation of mine. I don't know if it's within everybody's control right now, because I think the problem is we go to restaurants and you order something and you might get more than you want.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know how much you're ordering. And actually, we are partnering with Data Essentials right now on a really exciting survey that's about to come out. It's like a dream come true for me.
Oh, nice.
Where we've surveyed individuals that'll come out in the next few weeks, but I'll give you a little teaser. And some of the stuff we found that 59% of people surveyed say they would shop, they would go to a different restaurant if it offered more flexible portion sizes. So if there were a small, medium, large. You know, I always say, look, you can go into a Chipotle and customize everything about your burrito except the size, right? And people want that customized size, especially as we're hearing, you know, more about people taking the GLP-1 drugs, the Ozempics and everything. And they, you know, there's a whole new market segment that wants these smaller portion sizes. So, you know, anyways, that is one of the solutions I'm excited about. However, there's also a ton going on in technology. You know, we have markdown alert apps. I think FlashFood is here today, but like, there, you know, this idea of like, can we help sell everything right before it's about to get taken off the shelf or thrown out? That's like a no-brainer. It's a win-win-win-win. So I just think those should be everywhere all the time. We have some really exciting AI, you know, enabled solutions that are helping be more precise, you know, whether it's a grocery store that's forecasting how much of each product to buy, or it's restaurants trying to figure out how much to prepare. I think there's some great results we're seeing there. And then there's a ton of, you know, sensors and IoT enabled things that are monitoring the temperature of products throughout the supply chain that are helping to, you know, identify problems early, help shorter shelf life product get used earlier. So, yeah. There's kind of something in it for everyone.
That database is amazing. Where can people find it?
Yes. If you go to refed.org and look for the Insights engine, you will see we've analyzed about 50 solutions for how well they work, how much food they save, how much they cost to implement, how much they might bring in revenue or cost savings, as well as, you know, greenhouse gas benefits and more. So check it out, refed.org. There's also places to find different organizations. We have over 2,000 solution providers, we call them. That's organizations that provide some sort of solution in there that you can look up. We have a calculator. You can calculate impact or try out different scenarios. So
great website. Everyone should check it out. Yeah. In our final minute here, what are you excited about most today with this summit? And thank you for being such a great partner.
You know, I'm just excited to keep this conversation going. I think people need some positive things to latch onto. And I really feel like, you know, for us, we're looking out there and we're seeing, I know there's a lot of issues facing headwinds right now. And I think we're kind of looking out there at this topic going, it feels like we have a lot of tailwinds, you know, like, can we just run right now? You know, we have a lot of the solutions that are demonstrated and are ready to scale, or maybe they are scaling. I think there's a lot of interest from the funding community, both philanthropic impact investing and just, you know, regular investing, right? That are interested to fund some of this going forward. So it feels like everything's in place. And we have political support as well. So I think it's really just a time to cruise forward, and it would be great to have something we could all say is making progress during this time.
Absolutely. The hope is what we need. Thank you, Dana Gunders, for giving it to us. Please give her a round of applause. Thank you so much. In this next conversation, we're going to hear about how we can encourage a shift in eaters' habits so that we can all waste less food. Joining the conversation, we have Stacy Blondin, a behavioral science associate at the World Resources Institute. We have Caleb McClennan, the president of RARE. Jilly Stevens is the CEO of City Harvest. Roni Neff is a professor of at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And I'm excited to introduce our moderator for the conversation, Somini Sengupta, an international climate reporter on the New York Times climate team. Before I turn it over to her, I want to thank some of our in-kind partners, Boboling Cheese and Bread, Forager Project, Nature's Path, Applegate, and Driscoll's. Somini, I'm going to give it over to you. There you are. Nice to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to my panelists for allowing me to be curious with you out loud in front of everyone. So, I just want to open up because we're the first panel of the day, and one thing that really occurs to me when I go and buy food at the supermarket is that what we eat, what we don't eat, how we eat, what we throw away, how we shop, there are a lot of actors shaping those choices. It's not just on us. Food waste is part of that bigger picture. And I think that's kind of important to keep in mind, which also means that there are a lot of levers that you can pull because there are a lot of actors in this picture. So Caleb, I really want to start with you to understand, what does the science tell us about how we waste food, and what does the science tell us about how we can waste less food?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for the question. Great to see so many people here in person and online. I work for an organization called RARE, which thinks about how to leverage behavioral science for environmental action. And what you just described perfectly is we're sitting in this constant decision matrix, making tens of thousands of decisions a day. Most of them, as you know from reading Daniel Kahneman, they're all that fast types of decisions you don't even know you're making. And then food sits in that context. And so within those thousands of decisions, we make empirically at least 200 different food decisions in a day. So you're talking about going into the store and then prepping food, eating it, and many of them you don't know what you're making. So obviously there's big levers that can change what you do. There's financial levers, there's subsidies and incentives that change behavior. There's policy levers that can incentivize certain actions or redistribute things. And there's also tried and maybe less true, massive amounts of information levers that the environment field has used to try to inundate us with information about what to do and what not to do. Turns out that doesn't work as well as policy and finance. What we're tapping into more and more, particularly in food, is what does behavioral science have to offer? So things like nudging and choice architecture that Jana mentioned. How can you think about half portions, full portions, double portions? Do you really want that double portion, which most Americans are eating? Things like social appeals and social influence and norms. It turns out we behave a lot on what we think other people expect us to do. And RARE does an annual survey of climate behaviors. And it turns out we are very pro limiting food waste. About 90% of Americans think we should be reducing food waste. We think only 60% of Americans are like us. And how do we behave? We behave like those 60. We don't actually behave like the 90.
Right.
And then finally, emotional appeals, just heart, soul. How do you get people to take action based on things like love, friendship, et cetera? So there's a lot of different drivers in behavioral science we can tap into and have not even tried.
I mean, that 90% number, that's kind of a rare number.
Yeah, absolutely.
90% of Americans do not agree a lot right now on a lot of things.
Oh, no. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, if they agree on reducing food waste, but think that others are less virtuous, that is a very, very interesting thing to keep in mind. A question for you all, and jump in at any order, okay? We're talking about levers. What are the top levers for you? Like one really important lever. We can start with you, Roni. You've worked on one in particular, and that's the issue of food labeling, something that we encounter like every day when we go into the supermarket. Talk about that lever.
Yeah. So this is a really important lever, and there are many, and as was discussed, this is such a complex issue. We've got to hit it from all different angles. And one of them is that when we have to decide, are we going to eat this? Are we going to toss it? There's like a lot of both thoughts and emotions and subconscious reactions going on in terms of, is this going to taste good? Is it good quality? And is it going to make me sick? And so food date labels are one way that consumers often use to say, like, is this okay to eat? And a challenge is that for most foods, we would actually rather that they use their senses to make those decisions. Like, is it, does it look good? Does it smell good? Does it taste good? And so food date labels, having a standardized food date label policy will help us to better educate consumers on what to do with those foods and how to make those decisions. So right now, the date labels on food, there's no regulation at all, or almost none, and so they can mean anything. And what we hope is that there would be one that would say something about quality and one that would say something about safety, and that those would be standard across the country. And REFED has estimated that we could save about 3 billion pounds of food per year by having a standardized date label policy. So it could be pretty impactful. And then once we have that policy, we need to do education, and there's a few other pieces that need to go along with it to help consumers better understand how to use the labels.
So those two labels would be, is it safe to eat by whatever?
Use by, yeah.
Use by. But what does use by mean? Use by doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't mean that I can't eat it after September 22nd.
Right now it doesn't, because there's no standardized meaning, although industry has a voluntary agreement that says that the use by label would mean safety. But the problem is we can't trust that label means what it should mean.
Right.
That's only used for a few foods where safety is the key factor. But most foods, it's a quality concern.
Right.
And the quality is not even going to start deteriorating. By the date of that label, the quality is really, indistinguishable to most people.
Yeah.
So.
Other levers. Who wants to jump in? Jilly, do you want to jump
in? City Harvest is an organization here in New York City. We're a food rescue organization that's been around in New York City for over 40 years. And we capture that great food that's going to waste on a massive scale. This year we'll rescue and deliver over 86 million pounds of food. 70% of it is going to be fresh fruits and vegetables. And the quality is fantastic. It's perhaps too much broccoli is being grown. The farmer, rather than ploughing that crop into the ground, will donate it to an organization like City Harvest. And we'll take that food and deliver it to a network of about 400 soup kitchens and food pantries in the 5 boroughs of New York City. One of the things we've placed a great deal of emphasis on in recent years is making sure that we look community by community in the city to really understand what's going to be culturally desirable in that community, because that's another area where we can begin to see food waste if we're bringing food that we think is right for the community. So listening to that feedback from the people who are eating the food, from the food pantries who are distributing it, becomes critical, because we want to prevent any of the food that we've rescued from going to waste in the home.
That rescue is on the part of the farmer or the food distributor, that is voluntary or mandatory depending on what state they're in?
That's right. Most of what we're rescuing is voluntarily donated, and just at a massive scale. As we know from organizations like REFED, there's so much food being produced that isn't getting used, and so we can be there somewhere along that line to make sure we're capturing it and getting it into the hands of too many people, certainly in New York City, but across the country, who need help putting food on the table.
Another lever. Who wants to jump in?
Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy Blondin. I'm here from the World Resources Institute. We work on food loss and waste issues across the spectrum from farm to fork. I'm a behavioral research associate, so I focus on the consumer level. I would probably challenge the idea that there's any single lever that's going to impact consumer food waste on a massive scale. But as Roni pointed out, there are some that are harder hitters than others. So the one I guess I will talk on that front would be leftover reuse. And that was one that was identified recently by the MITRE Gallup group as something that people are notoriously very bad at. And it's not only leftovers, but things that are kind of just sitting in our refrigerators going to waste. So there are a number of behavior change nudges that have come out on this front, including Use Me Up tape. The Oz Harvest group has released that. But then there are just simple solutions like color coding your refrigerator shelves from green to red in order of kind of need to eat. And then also there are more and more food sharing apps out there like Olio, and then there's Fridges where you can actually go and leave your food on a like Good Samaritan basis for other people to eat. So I think we really need to cultivate an underlying culture of sharing and really getting the most out of the food we are already preparing.
What was that tape that you just said?
Use Me Up tape. It's
So
it says like Use Me Up. It
label
looks like
your-
caution
okay.
tape, but
Yeah.
it's you can stick it on food and it doesn't like hurt produce. Tear it off before you eat it, but you can put it like on different shelves in your refrigerator or on the food itself, and then it just indicates like this thing needs to be eaten when you open your refrigerator to prioritize what should be consumed first.
So we've got labels, which is a policy lever. It's kind of like a national policy lever, or at least supermarkets would have to agree to something altogether. We've got food rescue, voluntary for the most part, but I think there are 5 or 6 states in the United States that have laws that say big food producers, big restaurants, food distributors have to keep their food waste out of the landfill, right? They could either compost it, they could do rescue, etc. Honestly, I've seen there's like no enforcement most of the time. So food rescue, another lever, and the kind of at the consumer level, nudges, right? Any other levers? Yes.
I can chime in. When I mentioned that social normative bubble that we have, and we did a project, because the real challenge is, outside of say policy, how might you get these to scale, these behavioral changes? So Google has a commitment to have half their food waste by 2025 this year. As part of that journey, we partnered them with a pilot set of cafeterias, putting in social messaging around what other Googlers are doing. What are others doing with food waste? What type of portion sizes? And then, of course, because it's Google, they used AI to measure exactly how much food waste went into the cafeteria waste bins, and found out with this messaging trial about a 30% reduction in food waste across a 6-month period at the Google cafeterias. And then they were able to take that around the world. And so thinking about how to get that social influence leverage to scale, we're also working now with the entertainment sector in Hollywood, not to tell people what to do, but to get this idea of this environment around what are the emerging norms around food waste. So try to bring that 60% figure up a lot higher.
Okay, so walk me through that. I walk into a cafeteria, like on my college campus or at my workplace, and what am I being like? That seems very finger waggy.
Well,
What
it's
am I being
actually
told?
positive messaging
Yeah.
around the behaviors of others, as opposed to telling you what to do. And it's a
Okay.
very different field. I mean, the environment field has this challenge across all issues, where we're notorious for talking about the negatives of environmental bads, as opposed to the positives. And so,
What would a
this
positive
is
message look like?
just others are choosing a smaller portion size, or others are ensuring when you're putting your waste in the tray have actually had empty plates going into this area. Are you? So just sort of really continuing to channel that side of things, and really importantly for behavioral science, A/B testing all those messages
Right.
to see what works, iterate, and then as it works, then you can take that message to scale.
You know, food is so personal that I suppose it's unavoidable that we're putting so much responsibility on individual choice, right? But that's a lot of responsibility on the individual making food choices. A lot of times, those are working women like me. What about institutional reforms or levers? What kinds of things work? And I'm looking at you, Stacy, because you've tested some solutions that work, say at the supermarket. What works and what doesn't?
Sure, yeah. So at WRI, we love to talk about the motivation, opportunity, ability framework, which is basically a way of looking at how to shape consumer behavior. So as Roni and others have mentioned, a large percentage of Americans are already motivated to reduce food waste, but we really need these underlying structural and societal support systems for people to waste less. So we have turned our attention more recently to the retail sector as kind of this nexus between food suppliers and consumers. So on the supplier side, we have farmers and manufacturers, and then the consumer is retail and households. Households obviously contributing the greater portion of food waste at that end. And on the retail side, we did recently trial in an online simulated shopping market 3 different trials, one of which involved using an auto-populated shopping basket based on recipes and a meal plan that you create yourself. It can be suggested for you as well, but then your basket is auto-populated, made for the number of people in your house. So we looked at outcomes on how that aligned with the caloric needs that the family size needed for that week. And we did find that shoppers who used this tool were more closely aligned with their actual needs. And there was likely to be less wastage just because they weren't buying so many extraneous things. We haven't tested this obviously in a real world setting. And then we also looked at equalizing unit prices. So right now there is typically, at least in the US, an incentive to buy things in bulk like apples or grains or cereal or milk or anything pretty much. As you are looking at the unit price, you're thinking, okay, I'm going to get a better deal if I buy the gallon of milk, even if your intention isn't to consume that full gallon. There's like some kind of, I don't know, thrifty or frugality motivation there. So we looked at equalizing unit prices. And again, we did see a positive direction toward people buying smaller quantities when they were in this simulated grocery
Oh, that's
shopping
very
setting.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those 2 things worked, right?
Yeah, I will
Auto-populating.
caveat that it was a simulated.
It was a simulated
okay.
study.
And then
Yeah.
the final one, we did look at prompts, prompting people to shift from fresh to frozen alternatives where they kind of made sense. So, and again, we did see some trends toward when these prompts were placed in the simulated shopping setting towards people buying more frozen foods, which I think there's a lot of negative stigma around frozen foods. So, but there are some instances in which they can be kind of used more like direct one-to-one substitutions, like for smoothies and berries. There's really not a lot of difference once it's all blended up. And oftentimes frozen products are flash frozen, which means that the nutrients are preserved and the risk of going bad in your refrigerator is almost zero.
Other policies that research says have worked, such as the 6 states that mandate, right, that you have to either donate or compost or send it to a biodigester. Is there evidence that these things are working?
There is suggestive evidence that these are working, and there was a study that came out that said that they weren't, but there were a number of limitations to it. But there has been less food in the landfill and more composting, and there have been increases in donations as a result of these laws. So there's a need for more and further studies to sort of better demonstrate that. One thing to note about things like composting is that it's important to not have like there's a hierarchy or a noodle of like where are our preferred choices for reducing food waste. And the most important thing that we want to have happen is source reduction. We want to prevent it at the source, and from climate change perspective, that's where we get the biggest bang for the buck. And so even though like composting is really important and valuable, we still want to push towards prevention. And then after that, we want to push towards donation.
So buy what you're going to eat. That's the first, right? Only what you're going to eat. That's the highest
Yes.
level bang for your buck. Next, donation. Next, compost.
And there's a few other things
And a
in
few
between,
other
yeah.
things. Yeah. I mean, eggshells and banana peels are great for compost, right? But a perfectly good block of cheese, maybe not great for compost.
Home compost.
Home
But
compost.
Municipal compost, it could.
Right. I want to ask, as we wrap up, these are extraordinarily turbulent times. There are cuts to food aid, tariffs, immigration raids. All of that affects the food system profoundly, and it affects the number of food insecure people profoundly. So is this, I don't want to say, is this a good time or a bad time? Like, is there a particular opportunity in this moment? Or is this a particularly hard moment to move the needle on food waste policy? Jilly,
I mean, we're seeing the biggest cut to the SNAP program in history, with $187 billion to be cut. And now, as reported, I think, by Wall Street Journal over the weekend, we're going to see next month the last ever food insecurity report issued by the USDA. That will serve to mask the impact of those SNAP benefit cuts. So it's an incredibly difficult time, and a time that we really will turn to a lot of organizations like Feeding America across the country, organizations like City Harvest here in New York City, to figure out how do we keep this issue of food insecurity visible, because that US federal government data on food insecurity rates is going away.
Jump in, please. Is this, of course, it's an important time. It's always an important time to reduce food waste. But is there an opportunity right now? Is it a particularly difficult time to enact policy?
I mean, I'd say for two reasons, and they're both unfortunate reasons, but if we don't have the reality in front of us, food prices are rising, so obviously the value of food waste is increasing, and that monetary incentive we can't erase. With all the smartest parts in the policy in the world, still the monetary incentive is rising. And the second is it is increasingly difficult to talk publicly about climate. So we are forced in the environment sector, not just in food waste, to be making our case through other definitions, through health, through economics, through personal well-being and safety, et cetera. So that both for very negative reasons, higher prices, higher inequity, and not being able to talk straight about climate issues, if you want to see the change, is forcing us to think differently about these issues. And so I think our only choice is to be seeing those as opportunities, particularly in the messaging side. Otherwise, we just silence ourselves for a few years.
I mean, as food prices rise, do people waste less food? Do we know that?
No.
Okay. Well, you go,
I think Dana mentioned this earlier on the conversation with Danny. We see some mixed evidence on that front. People seem to be motivated by, or at least self-reportedly motivated by, like the opportunity to reduce the amount of money they're spending on food. But when food prices rise, we don't see necessarily the dip in food waste.
Right. Yeah.
I will say that in New York City, and I think in the face of rising food prices, the number of people visiting food pantries in 2019 was 25 million, or the number of visits to food pantries, rather, was 25 million, and last year it was 47 million.
Wow.
So many more people than ever before are turning to this network of pantries, I think, because of those high food prices. Go ahead.
So building on that, there is a strong motivation, as both of you had said, to reduce household food costs. And so one of the reasons that we may see increases in household food waste is that people are eating less in restaurants. And so the food waste is happening in their homes. And there are some others. But we can capitalize on that motivation in other ways by offering consumers options. And again, from a climate perspective, REFED has estimated that the most impactful thing we can do is changing portion sizes. And so
we didn't talk about that lever, but that's a really important one.
And that's also a public health lever as well.
Yeah.
And so having more options on what your portion size is can be a big one. Having resealable packages so that you can portion it out yourself. Having and frozen packages are often, people will just take out what they need. So giving consumers options like that can enable them to make changes.
I want to go back to that 90% figure, and we're running out of time. Does that make this a problem that actually can be solved?
I mean, from the broader climate equation, it has the most support in the public as an issue, understood, not debated. Everyone sees themselves as wanting to reduce it. And I think the question the panel is getting into, how? And that big social bubble is one of the lags, and then the policy and financial frameworks are others. So we're on the right side of those issues, but we still have got a big hill ahead of us.
Thank you very much. This has been super informative for me, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roni. Thank you so much, Jilly. Nice to see you. Thank you so much, Caleb. Thank you, Stacy. You were awesome. Thank you. Round of applause for them again. They were just fantastic. And I love the talk about levers of change and that tape that Stacy mentioned, the Use It Up tape. I love that. That's awesome. So we're now going to shift gears a little bit, because in the lead up to annual Stop Food Waste Day earlier this year, we launched a poetry contest amplified by the New York City's Office of Food Policy. And we asked young poets in New York and New Jersey to submit an original poem that captures what ending food waste means to them. We received entries from about 100 talented poets, and I'm excited to share that we have one of the winners with us here today to recite his poem. So please give a big round of applause for Prahlada Rastogi, a 10-year-old student from Princeton, New Jersey, and his whole family is here. So I'm going to hold this, and you can recite your poem. I'll hold it.
My name is Prahlada Rastogi, and I'm a 6th grader from Princeton, New Jersey. Today I'm here to present my poem, Where Did the Food Go? Take what you eat and eat what you take, but only enough food that you can eat on your plate. When you throw food in the trash, it turns into methane gas. If you compost the leftover food, it will change the earth's mood. Farmers work hard day and night, sowing seeds to harvest delight. Respect the earth, respect the hands, show gratitude to the land. Bring a reusable container to the restaurant, organize a weekly menu, help clean farms for food banks, and Mother Earth will always give thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Woo! You're great. Thank you so much. I love him. He's awesome. Thank you so much, Bobby. So great. And again, his whole family is here. They're wonderful. Give them a round of applause. So in this next conversation, I'm excited to sit down to talk about policy solutions. And I get to introduce U.S. Congressmember Dr. Maxine Dexter, who represents Oregon's 3rd District. Round of applause for her, please. Thank you. So nice to have you here. Thank you for joining us. I know these are busy times in Washington.
Well, not as busy as we'd like them to be, but yes, grateful to be here. Thank you.
So as you know, today's discussions are really centered around food loss and waste. Food packaging has to be part of that solution. I'm wondering if you can talk about your work to ban forever or PFAS chemicals from consumer goods and how you see that being part of the food waste sort of story.
Yeah, so first, I'm a physician, I'm a mom, and was an Oregon state legislator before I went to Congress. And Oregon is a progressive, motivated, and innovative state. And so Senate Bill 543 we passed, I believe in 2023, was banning forever chemicals. And we had tried to do it in 2021, so like many things, you keep going. So PFAS outlawed in Oregon, and then it also phased out polystyrene. So with those two, really could make a huge impact. Right. And we're already seeing change in behavior in Oregon. It's time for it to be a national endeavor. And frankly, we all are seeing more and more the impacts of those microplastics and impacts on health, and that we can't get it out of the ecosystem. So I think people are starting to realize it's not just about trash if you don't care about trash. It's that it's actually getting into our water systems. It's killing our environment in multiple ways. So there's lots of opportunity there, either from an economic or a health perspective.
Right. I know a lot of mission-driven CPG companies and retailers are very interested in having more sustainable, healthier packaging. Are there ways that federal policy can help them do that?
Without question. I mean, whether it's just changing the dating on packages, obviously you will produce less if you aren't turning it over as quickly. My family raising my kids, we'd have a no plastic challenge going to the grocery store. It's impossible, like yogurt containers and all these things. Those are easily addressed changes that if consumers are demanding it will actually drive change. And so I think consumer behavior needs to drive the changes, or as we heard just recently, policy. So it's a win-win, but if we are demanding it, it's easier for people like me to pass the laws.
Sure.
So I think writing your grocery store, writing your representatives, but also making different choices and buying those glass jars and things that may, cost more. Obviously, glass is also harder on the environment. So going to your local producers as well, if we can incentivize more of a supply chain incentive to keep things local. I think that's a huge environmental policy that we haven't really focused on enough, that supporting our local farmers, supporting, those produce items going into our school lunches and other things, we really can make policy that builds a more resilient ecosystem as well.
Local and regional procurement would be a huge part of helping solve a food waste problem. You mentioned being a doctor, being a physician, and you're one of several in Congress. And I'm wondering if you can talk about how that affects your sort of day-to-day work as a policymaker.
Yeah, we're seeing more doctors. I just came from a Power of Women in Medicine conference, and there's a huge increase in people from the medical fields interested in policy because, frankly, the medical system and healthcare is really in a steep decline and is really grappling for change. So I think that's driving part of it. We have 6 Democratic physicians in Congress now, and so we started a doctors caucus, and we're trying to leverage our input in our different areas, and luckily we're all different specialties. So I'm focusing on air quality and different policies that impact air and the health that we all are seeing erode because of poor air quality in this country. So it's driving policy that I'm trying to pass, but also just perspective that when you come to Congress, a doctor and maybe a teacher are some of the only people who have engaged with, and nurses obviously, but that have engaged with every different socioeconomic level, every religious, I've never taken care of a Republican or a Democrat, I've only taken care of people. And so you have an ability to interact in a different way and have perspective from years of practice that many people, if you've been in industry or banking, you may never have engaged with people who are houseless or as well as billionaires in the same day.
Right. Yeah. What a unique perspective. I would be remiss if I didn't ask how the Make America Healthy, Make America Healthy Again Commission, sorry, I didn't mean it that way, how that's impacting your work.
I mean, it's really a defense position right now. There are some, things that we heard earlier that this administration is incentivizing that is good.
Right.
But this whole endeavor is rhetoric, and it's certainly not using science. And I think that's really what scientists need to really assert, is that there is not science that is not based in reality. And that's part of what is being promoted right now. And it's really dangerous for our communities, certainly for our health. And when you can no longer trust your federal agencies and the information that they're sharing, it really puts a lot of burden on states and other entities. And we're going to see that right now because the FDA and the CDC are going to become a lot less reliable, and we are going to have to fill the gap.
You mentioned sort of the disdain the MAHA Commission has for science-based evidence. What could we do to turn that around as citizen eaters, as people who vote?
Just demanding the information is one thing. We heard there's not going to be food insecurity reports. Like, that is absolutely egregious. We know that the SNAP cuts are going to lead to increased hunger and food insecurity. So we should be demanding that information. And as someone who represents almost 800,000 people, when you start getting outreach, it starts driving your behavior, and it also gives you protection. You know, if I care deeply about the environment, but nobody's writing me about it, it's hard to drive that policy. So please don't assume that if you're from Maine or Oregon or somewhere that your voice doesn't matter. It actually does drive the work that we do. So reaching out to your elected leaders, sharing what you want, even if you know that they're aligned, is really important.
I've heard from other members of Congress, like Congresswoman Pingree, who's also here, that those stories are really important, that you need those stories so that you can communicate them to other policymakers. Is there a particular story that you've heard from a constituent that you want to share?
You know, I just came from this Women in Medicine conference, and so I think that was part of what I was telling them, is that using, you know, your place in the community to tell stories. And so many of our physicians are seeing that, but I'll just share the story that I think, and it's not food related.
That's okay.
But,
we love having you here, so thank you.
No, thank you. But immigration policy is obviously on everyone's mind right now, and I had a friend of a friend whose family was disappeared. And she reached out and said, you know, Maxine, they lived in your district. We can't find them. What can you do? And this is a mother and her 4 U.S. citizen children were at Peace Arch Park on the northern border of Canada, seeing her sister and her niece and nephews. And her mother was here is here from Honduras on a legal visa. And they went to have a reunion. And they've done this before. They did it in March. And as they were hugging, theoretically, the sister was across the border. And they were all taken into custody and disappeared for the American family was taken into custody and disappeared for 2 weeks. And so our team relentlessly, I literally got in the car and drove. We didn't know if we were going to find them in Tacoma or Seattle or Bellingham. And we just kept going until we found them. And so, but that story is really emblematic of what people across this country, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are dealing with right now. And being able to tell that story helps people understand it in a different way. Like they literally were just there for a reunion and were taken. And these are 4 U.S. citizen children, you know, not that should make the difference, but that is not the story that we are being told right now. So I know this is an environmental and food related issue, but the stories that are most resonant are the ones that we can relate to ourselves. And the idea of being at a family reunion and having your family disappeared, I think, is something that none of us are here for, and certainly nobody should have been electing somebody to do.
Absolutely, and these are people who contribute to their communities. They're working very hard. They're you know, spending dollars in their communities. Can you talk a little bit about that and in your state, sort of, you know, the vibrance of the immigrant community?
Well, and I would say just the community in general. And one other community group or company I wanted to highlight. There's a CEO, Londo Simpson, who started City of Roses Recycling, and he is really leading in Oregon and in Portland in particular, where we have local policies that are driving decline in food waste. So in Portland, you actually do have mandates if you make more than 1,000 pounds of excess food waste a week that you have to recycle or compost it. And so Londo has started this. It's a Black-owned family company. It's thriving, and he really is digging into the circular economy. So his family is making a difference. Our immigrant families are clearly making a difference, and I represent a agricultural area where we had cherries dying on trees and pears that, you know, rotted on the trees because people were afraid to harvest them. Some of the most expensive crops, and our state is dependent. We are an export prominent state, so we are at extraordinary risk economically if we can't get our exports out. So tariff policy, immigration policy, these things are really impacting us in our food systems as well as in our immigration systems. And this is just, I think, really a time for us to see the intersectionality of all these different challenges that we are encountering every day, whether it's on the streets and speaking up or advocating for a change because you care about your farmers or you care about having access to food. The 30% increase that we saw this year in food prices is not true unrelated. These are related issues on tariff and immigration policy.
Yeah, and people are seeing it in their own grocery stores. They're seeing the lack of produce, and because there aren't people to go pick it, and it's a terrible time. You're fairly new to Congress.
I am.
How has it been trying to work across the aisle?
I think that's also something, when I was running for office, I said durable policy has to be bipartisan. And we're seeing that, whether it's the Inflation Reduction Act being eroded because people didn't believe in it on the other side, or environmental policy that we're seeing executive orders. We need to get grounded in that we all want the same things. Right. And I worked on this with housing in Oregon, that we had a bipartisan issue. We had all the members of the community at the table who generally were enemies, but we all agreed that we needed more housing.
Right.
And so we were able to get to policy change that helped innovate how we built and paid for housing. We need to do that in every area of congressional leadership. And frankly, government needs to work.
Right.
And so it's not just making laws, but enforcing laws, hopefully making fewer laws that we actually want to prioritize and enforce. Americans need to demand better from their government. Politicians need to demand better from themselves, and working together is part of that. And we have to get over this partisan divide that we have. So the Doc Caucus, I've been reaching out to all the Republican doctors. Some of them, are challenging for me for what they've done personally, but we all agree on certain aspects of healthcare policy.
Right.
You got to find those alliances, and people who you think differently than you. Cliff Bentz is the only Republican from our state. I talked to him on the floor the other day, and I was stunned by some of the things he's working on and willing to collaborate on.
Right.
We have to rebuild that trust, and if there's not a better time than now, I can't imagine what it is, because we all are seeing the threats to our communities right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for that, because we need more of that bipartisan action. I'm wondering if you want to give a call to action to this audience that they can take away.
Yeah, so the SEEK, it's a sustainable environment, and oh my God, all of a sudden it's energy, thank you, coalition. All of a sudden I knew I was going to forget when I was up here. We have 100 members of Congress. It's a caucus for environmental and energy policy sustainability, and we have a thriving economy initiative that we really need to lean into. So there's many thought leaders and investigators and policymakers here. We need your help. We are trying to build the policies for the next iteration, hopefully a bipartisan one that is grounded in science and reality. So please reach out to SEEK, reach out to us. We have a lot of interest in building things from the bottom up, because honestly, the most important and impactful policies are going to really address the issues that people are facing every day, and we need to dig into that part right away.
Great point to end on. Thank you so much, Congresswoman.
Thank you.
Please give her a round of applause. Thank you so much. I'm now honored to be introducing another member of Congress who I admire very much, to talk about how we create the policy environment needed to eliminate waste along the supply chain. I'd like to welcome Congresswoman Shelley Pingree, who represents Maine's 1st District. Please give her a round of applause. She's one of my favorites. Nice to see you. And she will be joined by Kat Kinsman, the Executive Features Editor for Food and Wine. Please give her a round of applause.
I am so excited to be up here with you today, and pardon me if I use it as a little bit of a therapy session, but I went into a panic and guilt spiral last night, and it relates to what we're going to be talking about today. I got home late last night. We ordered some Chinese takeout food. Yes, I should have cooked at home and done all of these things. But it came with a whole lot of condiments I had not ordered, and all this plastic packaging and things. And I was standing in front of my trash and recycling thinking, I'm going to hell for ruining the environment by tossing out this thing, perhaps not using it. And it was something I didn't ask for, and it came to me anyway. and I'm looking to you as one of the helpers to get me out of this panic spiral.
Oh my goodness, I don't know if I can. And I think it's just time to go down the spiral. Well, no, I'm happy to be here to talk with you about this, and welcome to modern day food packaging and how our food system works, and why many of these issues are so hard to resolve, because we have designed a food system based on, plastic packaging, throwing away too big of portions. I mean, all the things people are talking about today. We have a lot to fix here. And on the other hand, we have one of those issues where I think an earlier panel talked about the numbers of people agree, 90%. I mean, let's face it, everybody's grandmother told us not to waste food. And so you just, in your heart of hearts, believe we shouldn't do this, hence the panic.
Oh, I was raised Catholic. You wait for something to mold before you can throw it away. But the thing is, the restaurant probably didn't have a whole lot of choice in how they sent me the food, it being in a plastic packet, in these plastic containers and things. So there's a chef who is one of our Food and Wine Best New Chefs of the class of 2025, Jordan Rubin, Mr. Tuna.
Oh, we love him.
He loves you, and he is one of your constituents. And he knows that you're a very solution-oriented person. So he asked me to ask you, what kind of work is being done for restaurants to incentivize them using better takeout containers, to use more sustainable practices? All of these things can be so much more expensive than more of this bulk commodity things. What are you doing in the state of Maine that is helping out folks like him who truly want to do better?
Well, so we're kind of stuck in a dilemma here right now. If this was a year ago, I would be talking to you about all the great initiatives we have going on, the ways we're helping restaurateurs, the way we're trying to reduce plastic packaging, the way we're trying to encourage, composting and a whole variety of other things. We've had a change in administration, you may or may not have heard, and many of their policies are going in the opposite direction. So it is hard to say right now, what we're trying to do at a federal level. In the state of Maine, they've been very focused on reducing plastic packaging. They've also been interested in and putting forward laws that reduce your ability to have plastic packaging that has PFAS in it. As you know, that's a forever chemical that stays in our bodies, stays in the soils, and that is a component of many of the packages that we have today. So we're kind of going through a revolution of how to have more recycled packaging or recyclable, so that if you get something in a container, you can throw it in your compost bin when you're all done with it, and ways to reduce that. I have seen a few very innovative kind of small restaurants that will actually allow you to bring in your own container to take the food. But let's face it, in a lot of people's modern lives, you're picking up the kids, you're coming home from work, you're getting the Chinese takeout food or whatever the takeout is, and you're coming to your own, table, and you might even be eating out of the same container. So it's like, it's not that easy in life, but changing how we think about these things would make a big difference.
And you yourself come from a farming background.
That's true.
As I understood. So the thing is, when I think about these products, there has been a farmer who has touched them at some point. The person who grew the soybeans for this soy sauce that I was feeling very guilty about, throwing out the components of the duck sauce, all of these components of it are personally made by a farmer who is probably struggling themselves, and the waste of this is. It starts to feel very heavy and unconscionable. One of my colleagues, our newly promoted Associate Director of Food, Brianna Colleen, is in Vermont, and she has seen, despite the best efforts at her farm, she's a farmer and she's an editor, she's a nutritionist, she's an incredible human being, but she has seen a change in policy in Vermont where they used to get subsidies to buy excess food from farms to put into food banks and other resources for people who are hungry, and she's seen a tremendous rollback of that in Vermont. What have you done in Maine that is helping combat that?
Yeah, good question. And that is actually one of the, so there's a couple different questions in there, but one of them in terms of this rollback. So we had a wonderful fund that supported local food purchasing in the last administration. It was, I think, a total of about $3 billion nationwide. It went to a lot of farmers, and it purchased food directly from you that went either into food banks or school lunch programs. And it was great for many reasons, because it got more fresh, healthy food into school lunch programs, into our food banks, but it also gave the farmers a guaranteed contract. And for many of them, and I know in my state there were several who were part of the program, who were able to sort of plan ahead, say, oh, I'm going to plant extra lettuce, or we're going to have a greater milk supply, or we're going to store more carrots this winter to sell to the school, whatever it was. And we found all kinds of good things about, if kids are eating carrots that were grown on a local farm, they're more interested in it. There's just a lot of good things about this. It was cut as we're going through this horrendous cycle of cuts right now. But I will say, sort of one of the things that Maxine was talking about, my previous colleague who was up here, I do have a bill now it's a bipartisan bill, because there were Republicans and Democrats equally angry that this was a focus of a cut. So, and those kinds of programs are really helpful to small to medium-sized farmers in particular, who are often dealing with unpredictable markets and unpredictable, you heard they often can't get enough labor to pick their crops, or we just have such adverse weather. So we're hoping we can bring some of that back and sort of make the case that this is a really important priority. It's not as much on sort of the food waste side, but it's certainly on the side of sustainability for our farmers and keeping them out there. And farms themselves, especially small to medium-sized farms, one of the reasons we look for programs that kind of help to make them more viable is they're local. They're not shipping around the country. They're often selling, at a farmer's market, a CSA, directly into a school or institution. And it's a way of reducing food waste overall, because you're not trying to get it, across the country, or it's not spending a week in a truck. It doesn't have the same kind of spoilage. And you also have the opportunity to buy it directly on a farm. And if you're a member of a CSA, you're buying from that local farmer, you're giving him a guaranteed income. But you also get this box every week, which has, smaller amounts of things, but a variety of things that you as a home cook, if you have time to be a home cook, can use and can sort of reduce the amount of waste.
It can feel in that moment, standing in front of the bin, so large and heavy, and it can make it feel like you are solely responsible for this problem. And then, if I don't do this thing, it's not going to make a difference. If I do this thing, it's not going to make a difference. I need to know where I can send my best power and energy. So it's not just going into the dread cycle. So it is reaching out to people like you and asking the right questions and putting the correct kind of pressure. How do I put that pressure?
Well, as Maxine was saying earlier, keep calling your members of Congress and your local state legislators and your city councilor, whoever it is that has some impact. In fact, they all do in your life, about whether your city's going to have a mandate or a composting program, or the policies that we do in Congress. And don't back down at this moment in time. There's a lot of worries that we can't use the word climate change, that everything's being dismantled, that democracy is falling apart in front of us. But it doesn't mean you should say, oh, well, what can I do? It's such a big problem. It just means double down on every possible thing. And I do think that the things that you do at home, now, look, you get Chinese takeout, you can't stress, okay? Throw away all those little packets. They send you too many because they don't want you to call up and say, why didn't you send me enough soy sauce? I think you got to do what you got to do you're not going to be perfect every day of the week, but changing our habits and getting into new habits. Again, you've heard a lot of people talking about a lot of food waste at home is frankly because we're not quite sure what to do with it. And I think some of that is generational change. My grandmother knew what to do with every scrap of everything that was ever going to be thrown away. And my mother did too, but there's a generation that hasn't grown up cooking or cooking around other people, or they're just too busy. They just don't have enough time, and everything sort of gets ahead of them. They're not able to use. But I would say don't let anything stress you and feeling you're a bad person, but also all these things are important to do, and encouraging other people to do these things in your community, or making it possible that compost pickup, happens on your block, or that some of the mandates that are happening in some states that say, well, restaurateurs really do have to make sure that they're separating the food waste and they're getting it to a composting or biodigester. It's not just going into the trash.
What is the best way I can yell at a corporation? What is the language? Because we don't always have a lot of choice in the packaging in which we receive our food. We can go directly to farmers. We have some tremendous farmers markets in New York, but there comes a time when I have to go to the grocery store and I don't have a whole lot of say into the kinds of packaging I get. And it can make me feel like I'm yelling into the void when I'm writing a letter to a corporation. Is there a cheat code? Is there language that they will listen to?
That's a really good question. I bet there are a lot of people in this room have some good ideas around that. But I would say, social media has started to impact corporations far more than it ever did before. And certainly food companies and grocery chains are very sensitive to this. So, organizing 6 of your, friends to be like sending messages back on the Instagram posts of your grocery store, everywhere else, all the things that you can currently do to sort of push back at that level, I think is important. Writing those letters, getting a letter writing campaign, even if it's 5 of your friends, they're going to start to see like, oh, there's actually somebody who cares about this stuff. Because I think one of the things that happens is that we get in this like spiral of, well, it doesn't matter anyway, and why would I ever write a letter to the grocery store about why do you use so much plastic or whatever. But one of our largest chains in Maine, Hannaford's, which is owned by a bigger international company, has made zero food waste part of its goal. And they not only have invested in that, they're shipping they're doing all the things in the hierarchy, of making sure they donate, but then if there's no other option at the end, they get it to a facility that turns it into a biogas along with manure from a local farm. So they've got a plan going on. And they actually have purchased new equipment that helps to separate the plastic packaging, from old loaves of bread or whatever it is. And that in itself is a real advancement in, okay, you can do something about this.
And on a personal level, you as a person who have been a farmer and have such a direct tie to the food, what are some of the things that you do in your own home to value the produce that you're getting and to save it and make sure that you get absolutely every bit out of it?
Well, one of the things I do policy-wise, and then I'll say what I do at home, but is one of the reasons I'm so supportive of small to medium-sized farmers is I think that they help us a lot in reducing food waste. I've run a farm much of my life, and the fact is when you're on a farm, you're already thinking about there should be no waste. If there are things that you can't harvest in the field or just the parts of the plant that you can't sell to somebody or eat, you make sure it goes in a compost bin along with the animal waste and everything else. So everything is sort of like a resource to you. It's not something to throw into a landfill. I'm very much like this at home. I was a hippie homesteader back in the 70s. So my whole life I've been able to cook and can and do all those things. So anytime I get a chance, if there's something left over, I turn it into something else, throw it into my freezer. Or I think the two things that people, often don't learn to do, but, throwing every part of a vegetable that you're not going to eat into soup stock and, boiling that up or throwing it in your freezer till you have time. I mean, it sounds a little bit like, who's got time for that? But it's not as hard as it sounds. And the other thing is learning that fruit, which is what we waste a lot of because the strawberries start to get old or everything else, can be made into jam in just like no time. And so I feel like if every school kid got a lesson in jam, maybe smoothies and soup, you'd have like these tools that kind of used up most of the things that you don't know what to do with. And that's part of the thing is that we just don't know what to do with it. But almost everybody today has a refrigerator with a freezer on it. You can throw a few things in there till you got the time. And then before you know it, you've made some jam and given it to your friends. And it's much easier to do than it looks.
I'm so here for the home economics revolution in there. Do you know in the state of Maine, is there a home ec program?
I think some schools have it. I mean, I'm so old that when I was a kid, it was mandated. Of course, the girls went to home ec and the boys went to shop. Now, forward-thinking schools give you all those opportunity, a little bit of woodworking and fix it, and a little bit of cooking. And in my day, you had to learn how to sew. So all those things were important. But, now, like every third Instagram post is either a Maha mom or a hippie left-winger sort of saying, like, look what I'm doing with my sourdough, or look how I'm making something on my own. And so we might do it through a different vehicle today, but I've found, one way to converge those differing points of view and perhaps who you voted for president is to say, hey, I'm going to make some jam today too, or here, look at me, fixing the hole in my fence and putting some more things back in my garden today. So I think there are ways we come together, and I think there are incredible vehicles with social media, YouTube today, for almost everybody to learn how to do that stuff.
I'm here with you for the jam and pickle
revolution.
Oh, and pickles.
Yes, of course.
And we have a few seconds left. What is your single favorite no waste recipe?
No waste recipe. You mean that I would just say, make soup out of it. I love to eat soup. Make soup out of it. You never waste anything. Everything tastes good in there, and you can throw your leftovers in most soups that you make. And, the more you experiment, the better it'll be, and the more you'll realize what a good cook you are, and your friends will be amazed.
Soup, jam, and pickles. Let's save the world with
There
that.
you go. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you so much. Thank you. Nice to see you. Another big round of applause for them. I am totally here for the home economics woodworking shop revolution. I'd like to go back to high school, and I thought I'd never say that if I could do those three things. So in this next panel, we're going to look at the power of cross-sector partnerships in scaling food waste solutions. We have David Rogers, the Director of International Development at WRAP. Give him a round of applause. Lorena Lourido Gomez, the head of IKEA Food at IKEA Retail Services. Round of applause. Harry Chrispin, a senior manager of ESG for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa at Hilton. Round of applause. And Elliott Wolf, the vice president and chief data scientist at Lineage Logistics. Round of applause. And moderating this discussion is longtime friend of Food Tank, Corby Kummer, the executive director of Food and Society of the Food and Society program at the Aspen Institute and a senior editor for The Atlantic. He's one of my favorite people. Give him a round of applause.
Great and distinguished group, and because we have little time and a scary countdown clock, we're going to go straight into specific examples of the wonderful approaches toward reducing waste that we have on our panel, which is more or less the subject of the day. And we have some very alluring accents about to come. So get ready to be delighted by accents. So our first is Harry, who's going to be telling us about Hilton internationally and the winnowing program they have and how it translated into a green Ramadan.
Thanks very much, and thanks everyone for having me, and I hope my accent lives up to those expectations. I'm Harry, and I lead Travel with Purpose strategy for our 1,000 Hilton portfolio hotels in the region of Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I think with hotels is we're yes people. We struggle to say no. If the guest has a request, we see to that request, which is fantastic if you're staying at one of our hotels. But it can create a bit of a default waste scenario. So as part of our Travel with Purpose strategy to drive positive impact, we set really ambitious carbon, water, waste goals, which included a target to implement a food waste management program in every single one of our kitchens globally. So you can imagine thousands of kitchens, thousands of chefs to engage. Partnerships were not only key for us scaling up, but they were actually key for us creating these solutions. So we, first of all, found a data partner, and that's with Winnow. We're really proud to have the Winnow Vision system in over 200 of our hotels. And the Winnow system is incredibly easy for our hotel team members to use. They throw waste in the bin as they normally would, and the system automatically identifies, tracks, and tells the chef what's going to waste. So straight away, the previously invisible waste in a food waste bin is now visible, and chefs can make decisions based on that.
Now, I'm going to stop you for
Please
a sec
do.
because there's lots of rival systems like this that claim to do the same thing for chefs. Why did you pick Winnow, and is it in use in the U.S. or various other countries, not the U.S.?
Yes, great question. So when we set about looking at this goal, we undertook a trial with Winnow and a few of their competitors, and Winnow came out on top in terms of delivering food waste, but also engaging our chefs. Now, I always say this, that the partnership that we've made with Winnow isn't just about putting technology in our hotels. Winnow have really helped us engage chefs, create kitchen champions, but most importantly, they've helped us create further partnerships and programs that we've delivered to reduce waste in particular challenging settings. So we had the Green Ramadan program, where we partnered with the United Nations Environment Program, West Asia, and we also had the Green Breakfast program, where we partnered with the UAE National Food Loss and Waste Initiative. Now, we made those partnerships with Winnow, and both of those partners are absolute experts in their area, far more expertise than we are. And they were able to provide us with strategically placed, like authentic and impactful guest messaging that we were able to put in place at our breakfast setting and in those Ramadan celebrations. Now, for those in the room that know, the culture about Ramadan is all about giving and receiving food. So food waste can rise by up to 50% in these settings. And of course, I'm sure you're all staying in a hotel last night and tonight. You know how important breakfast is to that hotel stay. We in the trial hotels, there were just 13, and we serve about 1.9 million breakfasts every year. So what did that look like? We put the guest messaging all across the guest journey in the buffet setting. And then on top of that, Winnow were able to tell us exactly what the most wasted items were. So the best example of this, they said that bread and pastries were wasted the most at that setting. So what did we do in response? We simply placed that messaging that UNEP provided, which is wonderful. During the Ramadan, it was double the blessings, half the wastes. So I know they spoke about nudges earlier, but you know how positive that messaging is, and it had a massive impact. So we placed the messaging according to where Winnow guided us. Not only that, but then we were able to work with our chefs to find out solutions. And these solutions are so simple. So all of that technology, all of these partnerships, the end result is basically we changed the culture of chefs seeing waste as an opportunity. So you've all been there at breakfast, you're walking through, you have your plate, and you take that last croissant. What our chefs were able to notice is that's going to waste using the Winnow system, and they simply reduce the size of that croissant. The guest is still very welcome, we're still hospitable, they can still very welcome to take that. They're just more likely to finish it, or at least waste less.
So was the messaging just for the chefs and the staff about how portion size and how much to put out, or was it to the guests to make them feel guilty?
Certainly not making the guest feel guilty, Corby. There was two types. So positive guest messaging at the buffet. Types of messaging that encourage food reduction. So double the blessings, half the waste. Getting people to rethink that default waste scenario or that default culture of sharing as much food as possible, and linking them that there is still double the blessings, there is still goodness, there is still positive culture in less waste. So that's the guest messaging side, and then we've got the fantastic chef messaging side and all of the data that comes from the Winnow platform. So all of that waste is going in the bin. Winnow can simply say, bread and pastries, you're wasting too much, and chefs can take away and respond to that.
I hope everyone in the audience, anyone who's worked for a food bank, knows what everybody's offered all the time is bread and croissant. The amount of waste every day is really continues to be shocking. So if you've got any tips on how general U.S. food service outside of Ramadan and breakfast can reduce food, bread waste, that would be great. So in the case of yours, was it putting out less bread, making smaller croissant? What was it?
Making smaller croissants, putting out less bread, rethinking how we're displaying that bread as well. And take fruit as an example. Fruit is also wasted very regularly in our breakfast settings and the Ramadan setting as well. Just changing the way we cut fruit, just changing the way we portion fruit. So, instead of a large bucket of watermelon, putting it in a smaller display. All of these small changes can make a really big reduction on food waste, and at the same time, not impact guests' satisfaction at all. Guests won't even notice that it's cut differently, it's cut smaller. They're still welcome to go and take, but there's food waste reductions in the background without.
Great. And do we have to, I'm about to move to Lorena, but if anyone here is working in food service and wants to find all of these tips, are they deeply behind firewalls in Winnow and you have to pay an enormous subscription fee? Or, is it available and we can get the fruits of your interest and
No, it's
reduction?
available. And I think, we're through these partnerships, we're trying to change the hospitality and the hotel setting and the way we're laying out breakfast. And of course, we're making that data available, and we're working on a white paper which will simply summarize all of those simple changes. And there's plenty more partnerships that we have with WWF, Refed, where that information is available too.
And Refed, great. We will look forward to that.
Appreciate it.
Lorena, how did you take these insights and start? I promised I wouldn't talk about Swedish meatballs, and here I am asking about meatballs at IKEA.
Thank you, Corby. And thank you, Harry, because you just set the stage beautiful for what I want to share. Talking about accent, by the way, here you go, next level up. So back at 2016, we committed to scale our efforts to reduce food waste. We knew with our reach and our size, we could do pretty much a very big impact, but we didn't have all the answers. So we had a couple of options. We could sit down and scratch our heads and trying to be intelligent, or we chose to go the other way. So we partner also with Winnow. They are the guys in the room today, right? We partner with Winnow with a slightly different angle. So we use their knowledge back then in 2016. They were a startup in London. And we partnered with them to use their experience, their technological know-how, to co-develop a solution that was tailored to our volumes, our dynamics, our 400 restaurants. And what we did is we opened up our kitchens, and we use our kitchens as a playground. We test and we try together. And we invite all of our coworkers to co-develop the solution. And what that generated is a lot of engagement from everyone working within our restaurants. They are the true ambassadors. They are the ones making it happen. Then it was, I was back in UK. I was in the UK team back then. And I can tell you that co-developing together a solution is truly energizing, is very powerful. So I invite the many people to please involve your coworkers. They have the answers and they have the power. They meet the customer every day.
Can you give us an image of what a solution was that you co-developed?
So is this AI technology vision? So it's very, very simple. So a coworker that serves food, they take the leftovers when they are serving, because of course you can have food for a long period of time out there. Right. So if I use the sample of chips in the UK, they could see that they were putting in the basket the chips, and the solution will measure and we weigh how much that waste was, and at the end of the day they will have a report. So that coworker will know that what they produce and serve that day, how they will have to adjust the production going forward. So it's giving them real ownership on the food they serve every day.
So it's a question of data, and then that affects their production plans.
Precisely.
And for the next day.
Precisely.
Okay, we have a lot of Winnow support here, and somebody from Winnow in the front row. Thank you, that's great. And now we have Elliott, who's going to pull back 30,000 feet to gigantic warehouses and gigantic 18-wheelers, and the idea of telling enormous supermarket chains and food service organizations how to order more smartly so there's less waste.
Yeah, so by way of background, I work for Lineage. Lineage is the largest food warehouser in the world. We have about 500 sites. Imagine Home Depot times 3, double its height, insulate it well, bring it down to 0 Fahrenheit, and fill it with food. We touch approximately 1/3 of the frozen and refrigerated cargo consumed in the U.S. Now, these facilities are sitting upstream of largely 3 markets. So there's retail, where you go to the grocery store, there's food service, restaurants, and then there's import-exports. The U.S. is the largest agricultural exporter in the world. On the supply chain level, there's a couple things that we do to lower food waste. The first is we've been roboticizing a lot. And if you add robotics to these operations, they allow you to cycle food much faster through the system. It lands on the consumer with more shelf life. They're less likely to have to throw it away. The second is better predictive accuracy on what's needed when and where. So if you send too little food to a certain location, you're going to anger your customers. You're going to lose revenue. You might have to send an emergency 18-wheeler across North America if you run out of something. Alternatively, if you send too much food, this is perishable inventory, and so it's use it or lose it. If you send too much, then you have to dump it. Now, with advances in AI, ML, and better data access, we've been able to hone those predictions much more tightly. And a lot of that transpired during COVID because we had to proactively position inventory so that the US didn't run out during panic buying. But then if we do catch food waste in the system, we're very often trying to perform a diving catch to then try to reroute it somewhere useful.
Can you bring us into an 18-wheeler with 50 kinds of yogurt that you were talking about, sort of dictating what the customer was going to get through emergency powers of COVID?
Yeah, so most U.S. supply chain is set up like a pull system. So the demanders of food, retailers, for example, will place orders with inventory owners, and then we will fulfill those orders. During the COVID panic buying waves, particularly for New York City in the early phases of the pandemic, we started having customers devolve inventory management decisions to us. So instead of sending 50 types of yogurt on an 18-wheeler into Perth Amboy to feed retailers in New York City, we would only send 20, but instead of that truck being half or 2/3 full, that we overfulfilled the orders and filled that truck to have it be more efficient, knowing that there was going to be demand for it in New York for COVID.
But then did you convince your customers that this was actually more efficient and better and they should continue it post-COVID?
In the subsequent years we have, COVID was such an emergency that we said, basically, you either are getting underfulfilled or overfulfilled. We are not sending you exactly what you want. And so we had no choice because we had this huge unplanned transient spike in demand coupled with a labor shortage. And so, but that opened the door to a lot more collaboration across the food industry to make better decisions for the benefit of the system, as opposed to provide exactly what someone said they wanted, even though that's not what they needed.
And then is it enter robotics, which slowly but surely picks off every human being and replaces their job? Could you tell us what robotics does more efficiently and what it actually looks like as you practice it?
Yeah, so in a lot of our new facility designs, our robots do things that humans would be physically incapable of doing. For example, we've been over-indexing on layer picking. It makes a very nice pallet sent into the retailers, but this giant robot comes from Denmark, so we call it the Norse hand of God. Giant robot comes down and can palm 200 kilograms worth of layers, worth of inventory. And that's how, for example, you have 25 types of bacon available in a grocery store. Those grocery stores might need tons of material, but they need tons of material spread across 25 different SKUs. And so those robots are fulfilling that.
And did you reduce your workforce in favor of robotics? Now, he was not prepared for this question.
I mean, we've been expanding, so most of these robots are in new construction, greenfield construction. In general, no one wants to go do unnecessary work in a freezer. And so if you're asking someone to go into one of these giant frozen warehouses, you're asking someone to go perform physical manual labor with heavy weights in a 0 Fahrenheit environment. No one wants to be asked to do that unnecessarily, knowing that there's a technology that could do it for them.
You've sold us, at least on the walk-in freezer example. Thank you. Harry, I'm all set to think about the Sydney Opera House, and you told me you've got yet better examples, but tell us what you do and how you've been putting it into practice.
Corby, thanks. Yeah, I ambushed Corby on the way here. I'm David from RAP, and we work around the world tackling food waste and food system at a really practical level. So I see some good examples of things that work. And I wanted to be the voice of positivity here today because I am seeing partnerships in the world which are reducing food waste and are working. And therefore, I think perhaps as we finish this panel, we can go away with some hope. Corby's right. I wanted to talk about the Sydney Opera House, first of all. You can all imagine the Sydney Opera House. It's a beautiful building. And around the outside of the Sydney Opera House is the Sydney Opera House Cafe, which serves about 3,000 covers a day. It's a pretty big space, and through a partnership with government funding, philanthropic funding, a technical AI solutions provider, RAP technical expertise, the expertise of the chefs and the staff that are working in the Opera House Cafe, we went through a process of reducing their food waste by 33%. And if they can do it, the owners of that location actually own another 5 or 6 large venues across Sydney, so they're able to roll that out across the city and bring food waste down really well. But there's a couple of other things, just hearing the examples of the other panelists here today, and also some of the things that people were talking about earlier. There's another example of a project we worked on. It started in Australia with Woolworths and GS1, the barcode people, embedding extra details into 2D barcodes, so there's better forecasting and inventory tracking management just as Elliott was saying, that reduces the amount of over or under supply, and particularly we're looking at oversupply in the supply chain. That food will all become surplus and either thrown away, possibly redistributed, but there's a lot of restrictions on that, and so that food would likely end up in landfill. And we've taken the learnings from that project in Australia. We're now applying that in South Africa with some big retailers and their supply chains in South Africa. So as we build this sort of global movement, people can learn from each other around the world and see the solutions that really work. And then the final one, I just wanted to mention, somebody earlier mentioned the Use It Up tape, and that is really cool, actually. And that reminded me of a partnership that's happening right now in the city of Denver with Sprouts. And I noticed that Sprouts were a sponsor today, so shout out to them. Providing packs to shoppers that come into Sprouts stores in Denver, and also through the city, a partnership between the retailer, RAP, and the city, to provide people with that Use It Up tape with recipes, portion size advice, and real practical hints and tips as they go through the shop, and as they live in their homes, that they can use to reduce food waste. Because, as we heard earlier, nobody really wants to waste food. People are looking for advice in how to do that. And if you can reach people through the city that they live in and the shops that they go to, you reach pretty much everyone, because everyone lives somewhere or shops somewhere. And that's a really powerful way to get messages across. So yeah, 3 really practical examples, Corby. I know I said I would only speak about one, but I love to go off on a tangent.
This is great. So I think that what we've heard this morning is that it's an example of logistics and operations efficiency, and also messaging the people who work both behind the scenes and end-use customers, which has been de-emphasized. I mean, everybody wants to know that, but you are all working on things that help from the very beginning to the very end. So we can learn a lot of messages from all of you, and we all want to look and find winnows and other information that's going to help us with everybody we work with and collaborate with. So I wanted to thank David, Lorena, Harry, and Elliott for a really fascinating group of people, and of course Food Tank for bringing us all together. Thank you.
Round of applause as they exit. Thank you, Corby. Thank you all so much. Great job. Thank you. I love to see the partnership and collaboration between, retail, the private sector, nonprofits. It's so exciting. So again, thank you to Corby and all of the panelists. So I get to now sit down with somebody who I have had fun talking to before, his name is Michael Grunwald. He's a journalist, and he's the author of a new book called We Are Eating the Earth. Please give him a round of applause. So Michael, food loss and food waste are sort of a new topic. You've always, you're interested in environmental issues, but food loss and food waste has recently sort of been something you're excited about learning more about. Why?
Sure. Well, at first, I wanted to thank you for having me here. I know I'm a little bit of a skunk at the garden party for some of this stuff. But look, my book is called We Are Eating the Earth, and it's about how agriculture is eating the earth, right? That, we all hear about how cities and suburbs are sprawling into nature, but that's 1 out of every 100 acres of land on our planet. And right now, crops and pastures are 2 of every 5 acres, right? We lose a soccer field worth of tropical forest to agriculture every 6 seconds. And a quarter of it is just waste, right? We are wasting a quarter of the earth, right, on this stuff, and it's just shocking because agriculture it's our leading driver of deforestation, of wetland destruction, of water pollution, of water shortages. It uses 70% of our fresh water, and if we're just wasting a quarter of it, we're using a landmass the size of China to grow garbage. So that's, as people have said, that's at least something nobody wants to do.
Yeah, nobody wants to do it. And I'm wondering, if none of us wants to waste food? What's driving food waste?
It's funny, as in the developing world, a lot of it is food loss, right? Where you have crops that are there's primitive harvesting equipment.
I wouldn't call them primitive. I'd call them traditional.
Well, sometimes it's it's just not good enough harvest. It's
Sure,
leaving stuff out
sure.
there to rot, and and it's not because they want to. It's because they don't have the technology and the money that could get it to market. They have these you have storage facilities that are the moisture gets in, the rats get in. You have terrible roads that they can't get their stuff to market. And then in richer countries, there it's nearer to the fork. And there we're just we're wasting stuff. It's we're our eyes are bigger than our stomachs. And I wrote a story recently in Slate because some people may have heard that people are upset about how much they're spending at the grocery store. Right, that's kind of a big political issue, food inflation. Well, since prices started to spike in 2021, we have not reduced our household food waste at all. So as upset as we are about how much we're spending, we're still throwing a lot of it away. So we're not upset enough to change our behavior. So one of the takeaways for not only food waste and food loss, but a lot of the stuff I write about in the book, including how are we going to eat less meat, particularly less beef, how are we going to change our farming practices. Changing behaviors is really hard.
Yeah, you talk a lot about nudges. So getting people to eat less meat by making plant-based the default in New York City hospitals. What are the nudges, do you think, that can help us to prevent food waste?
Well, I think you've heard some of it from earlier panels, right? Like, and there's pretty incredible research that if you just, if you don't give somebody a tray at the, at the cafeteria, they're not going to pile up as much food. If you give them a smaller plate, they're not going to, they're not going to eat as much. If obviously, if you tie it to money, if you charge by the pound, by the ounce, they're not as. But a lot of this also is, because I've become so. A little bit pessimistic about people changing their behaviors, right? Like as a species, we seem to be, not so good at making sacrifices for the planet, not so good at changing what we do in our daily life, but we're really good at inventing stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited about, some of these technological solutions. We've heard about some of the AI in the logistics space. I like talking about how, I don't waste any food in my house. None of my family does. And it's not because we're awesome people. It's because we have a Mill Technologies food dehydrator.
I love my Mill.
It's amazing, right? And so we just throw in our food scraps and overnight it turns it into chicken feed. And so that keeps it in the food system. And those are, every batch of, it looks like coffee grounds. Every batch that we send back to mill, those are soybeans that some farmer doesn't have to grow and doesn't have to use land and doesn't have to cut down trees to grow that food. So I do think this is, technology. I have solar panels in my house. And so I'm still terrible. I leave the door open so the even when the air conditioning's on, but I don't feel so bad because, it's clean electricity. I'm not using fossil fuels. I do think some of these technological solutions that acknowledge our weakness and selfishness and just kind of, lameness as humans are going to be an important part of how we change our, how, if not changing our behavior, changing our outcomes.
Yeah. While I love having my mill and solar panels are wonderful, they're not accessible to a lot of folks. So I think that's something I'd be interested in hearing, like the accessibility issue of these technologies.
It's a problem. And this is, on the flip side where I write about alternative proteins and, the problem is going to be getting this stuff to scale. And right now, mill is not accessible to ordinary people. They gave me mine.
Me too. I did not pay for it.
Exactly. I mean, I wouldn't pay $1,000 for the thing as much as I love it. But the way to get it to scale is you see there are some, for example, some communities have pay as you throw garbage, right? Where you pay more if you have a bigger garbage can. And with mill, if half of our food is basically, is the food scraps, the organic waste. If you can put it into your mill, you don't need as big a garbage can, so you can save money. And so they're doing these in places like Tacoma and Phoenix. They're doing these sort of they're trying to roll it out so you can have it on a large scale. An entire neighborhood will get a mill, and then as they manufacture more of them, the price goes down. You can imagine in some of these apartment buildings, right? If you give everybody a mill to start, it's a little bit like the idea of like pre-built. You build a house with solar to start. Then you can rethink. You don't need that big a garbage room. It isn't going to stink. So there are, there are subsidies. We've saw people used to say, well, nobody's going to ever be able to afford solar, and for a long time they didn't, and then they do, right? And
well, they might not.
Well,
soon.
There's $500 billion invested in solar solutions around the world last year, and that's why 10 years ago solar was a rounding error in global electricity, and now it's coming up in the in California, you have days where it's 30-40% of the load. So I do think you're going to need some policy help, but it's not hopeless. The way to get stuff to be cheap is to have a large supply, and so right now there isn't the large demand, and so there's a bit of a chicken and egg problem that we see with a lot of this other stuff. But I have a lot of confidence because unlike when I'm banging my spoon in my high chair about how as a society we're going to need to eat a little bit less beef, I cut out beef, but beef is delicious. I miss it. Now, I don't miss wasting food, right? That's not something where I'm like, oh, those were the good old days where I used to, the average American household wastes $2,000 a year on food that never makes it to their stomachs. And I think if we could, get rid of that, nobody's going to be too sad.
Yeah. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your book, We Are Eating the Earth. Can you talk about some of the personalities in the book?
Sure. Well, look, I mean, my main character is this guy, Tim Searchinger, who essentially sort of figures out this land problem, this idea that we are eating the earth, and that our climate analysis, the way we think about, initially he looked at biofuels, which are eating about a Texas worth of the earth, but he went on to look at livestock, which are eating 50 Texases worth of the earth, and agriculture, which is eating 75 Texases, and he realized that the climate analysis of this stuff does not take land into account. It treats land as if it were free. And, on the energy side of climate, we kind of know what we have to do, right? We just need to basically electrify the global economy and, run it on clean electricity. And that's going to be hard, but it's a political problem. And we're actually even starting to do it, just not fast enough. And because of what's happening in Washington, like in the United States, really not fast enough. But on the food side, we don't even know we didn't even know what we need to ask. It's really it's not just politics. It's really an analytical problem. And so that's why my main character, Searchinger, is an analyst. He's a figure stuff out guy. And I think right now, food waste is an area where we can actually make progress, but on getting rid of fossil fuels, we have a fossil fuel administration right now, and we're not going to make progress. We're rolling back progress. I always laugh to my friends from the energy world. I say, like, well, at least you have progress to roll back. The food problem, the food problem's still getting worse. And this is a really good time. I wrote about dozens of potential solutions, but honestly, none of them have any traction yet. And this is a great time to figure out which ones of them work. And then when there's a friendlier administration in place and in other places around the world, to start deploying some of those solutions. Because, food is about 20, 25 years behind energy, and we don't have 20, 25 years to catch up.
Yeah. Michael, you write about the hyper efficiency of industrialized pork and chicken and the opportunity that there may be to intensify beef production. And you're also suggesting that factory farming, industrialized animal agriculture, is a necessary evil, a solution from your perspective. I don't agree. We've had this debate before. I still like you. I'm wondering how you can try to convince me and the audience that industrial animal agriculture is necessary.
Well, here's what I'll say, because that's probably a losing battle at this point. And I do want to, I recognize a lot of the problems with industrial agriculture, the way they treat animals, the way they treat people, use too many antibiotics, make a big mess. could be the cause of the next pandemic. Their politics suck. I get it. What they're really good at is making a lot of food. And over the next 25 years, we are going to have to make more food than we've made in the last 12,000 years. And we're going to have to do it without using more land. And so that's where, when we talk about industrial efficiency, about intensive agriculture, that's not just, I'm not just saying that to be contrarian. I'm saying it because we are going to have to feed a growing population, and we cannot keep cutting down trees to do it. I do not say that industrial agriculture is the only way. But what I will say, and this is where I'm going to be the skunk at the garden party, is I saw, some of the discussions last night, and then even some of them today, was this, this excitement about this agroecological revolution, and this discussion as if the big environmental problems with agriculture were too many pesticides, too many GMOs, I don't like the fertilizers, look what's happening to the microbiome. And I'm not saying those aren't problems, or then those aren't things we should think about. But the big problem with agriculture is that it is eating the damn earth, that it has now taken over 40% of our world, and that we are on track to deforest another dozen Californias by 2050. And what I did not hear people talking about is how are we going to make this kinder and gentler organic and regenerative agriculture higher yield? Because then I got no problem with it. And I went down to Brazil, and I saw some farms, mostly kind of combination corn, soy, beef, where they did a lot of stuff that Michael Pollan would love. They had the rotational grazing, regenerative practice. They integrated the cattle with their cover crops. They had no-till farming, and they had kick-ass yields, often 5-10 times as high as their neighbors, which meant they were using 1/5, 1/10 as much of the Amazon, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
That said, they also had feedlots that Michael Pollan would have hated. They were fertilizing their pastures. Again, bad fertilizer. I do think that, if you talk to a farmer, even an organic farmer, and if you talk to somebody who's looking at this problem globally, the yields matter. We cannot just hand wave away the yields. And to bring it back to food waste, one of the ways I hear it hand waved away a lot is, we don't need more food, we just need to waste less food. And we should absolutely waste less food, but even if we cut food waste globally in half, and actually even if in the developed world, in the rich world, we cut meat consumption in half, because right now it's 450 million tons a year, and we cut out the biofuels that we all hate entirely, we're still going to need to make more food with less land. The math just sucks. And so I know it makes me unpopular. I'm the guy waving my hands in the air and saying more food, more intensity, sustainable intensification. I get why people don't like it, but I still think you got to grapple with it.
I mean, I think sustainable intensification is working when we're talking about terrestrial agriculture. I don't know how that translates to the oceans and what we're doing there. I feel like you have this either or approach, that either we're doing it, the industrial way, or we're doing it the hippie way, right? There's somewhere in the middle.
Well, I think that Brazil is a perfect example, and I try very much not to be either or, but where I am, and I think that both of the, I was spectacularly ignorant about food. I was an energy guy, and so it's been really interesting to me to see the way, the kind of look. I came from Politico magazine, so I've covered the political culture war, and it's like, oh shit, there's food is the same way.
Yeah,
it's like you've got these ideological silos, and nobody gets out of them. And I feel like everybody's got a lot, the vegans can learn from the regenerative people who can learn from the industrial people. And I don't think that, I don't think it's either or, but yields matter. We need quadrillions more. We're going to need quadrillions more calories by 2050. And again, we are on track to blow past 2 degrees Celsius of warming just from deforestation in Africa. So stuff is really going to have to change. And I think a lot of people who support lower yield agriculture have come out and said we don't need more food, or basically the this problem can be solved through better distribution or less food waste, or, people should just all go vegan. Basically, somebody else is part of the problem. And my feeling is we have got to make more food. There are hungry people, and we have got to save the forests that we have left before, the entire world turns into a farm. And that is on farmers as well as eaters. We all have to be part of the solution. And I don't like the way that in some of these discussions, the idea that intensity is seen as just the devil, right? Remember, agriculture has been making a mess since it began for 12,000 years. We had deforested an entire South America worth of land before the Industrial Revolution. So I think there's this feeling and Michael Pollan has written beautifully about the environmental damage of intensification. This idea now we drench our farms in chemicals, and the animals, they have numbers instead of names. But the real environmental disaster of agriculture is the initial transformation of nature into farmland. That's when you lose the biodiversity. That's when you lose the carbon. And I know that's a kind of inconvenient truth for the 2020s, but it's and it doesn't mean that factory farming is the only way to deal with it, but it's got to be dealt with.
It definitely has to be dealt with. That's one thing we agree on. I wonder, I've been asking everyone for a call to action, that they want to leave this audience with during Climate Week. Your book is not exactly a call to action. It's a call to sort of have people think differently. Is that what you want?
Yeah, I mean, part of what I'm talking about is a land ethic, right? This idea that we think of land, it's there's a lot of land, and this was the land of opportunity, and it was in the United States, and we saw it that way because there was this feeling that our land was, it was endless, that there was an infinite amount, right? 40 acres and a mule, go west, young man, all of it is just about this endless land. But land, there's a lot of land, but not endless amounts. And now we're living in this age of limits. And part of what I'm talking about is this idea that sort of every acre is sacred, that every acre needs to produce as much of it as it can, whether what it's producing is carbon storage or, biodiversity and other ecosystem services, or whether what it's producing is food or shelter. It's really important that, that we have this kind of food abundance and that requires taking land seriously. I mean, my call to action, I always say it's in terms of individual behavior, it's really simple. It's eat less beef, waste less food. Those are, I can give you 50 things to do, and the other 48 combined wouldn't have as much impact as eat less beef, waste less food. I'm often asked if you have what's your third thing? And I'm eat even less beef. So, it's 10 times as bad as chicken and pork from a land use or climate perspective. So, I mean.
Thanks, Michael. I agree that we need to take land seriously. Thank you so much. Stay seated for a moment. This was a great conversation. I'm excited to share, even though I disagree with him on many things, that we have a few copies of Michael's book, and they're signed. So we are eating the earth. We have them to give away. If you look under your chair right now, some of you will have a fruit or vegetable sticker underneath. If you find one, hold it up, and find a member of the food tank team to go get your copy. I want to see who gets them.
Exactly. All right.
Yay. Great. All right, wonderful. All right. Calm down and let's finish this morning out. Everyone sit back down.
You're like Oprah on this stuff.
All right, no, created chaos. Everyone take your seats. Give Michael a huge round of applause, please.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me. Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. I appreciate you. Okay, so it has been an incredible morning. Thank you all for being here. Before we head to the reception and the delicious lunch that's been prepared for you, we have one final conversation to reflect on what we've heard. So please join me in welcoming two more of our co-hosts. We have Esther Cohn, the Vice President of Communications and Public Affairs for FlashFood. Give her a round of applause. And Alison Bodor, the President and CEO of the American Frozen Food Institute. Give her a round of applause. You all right? Before I begin the conversation, I'd like to thank a few more in-kind partners, Little Sesame, Kerry Dairy Ireland, and Simply. So this has been a great morning. I feel really good about it. I'm wondering what stood out for you both.
A couple things stood out for me. Thank you, Danielle. First of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for having AFI as a sponsor of this great morning. A few things. One, the complexity of our food system, and I loved hearing from Elliott about the cold chain and what an important part of preservation that is. I'm not sure he nailed that point on or I want to reiterate it, that, we have a solution. We have an opportunity to prevent food waste through freezing, and the cold chain is an incredible part of doing that. And it takes an infrastructure that goes from the field to the food processor, to the community, to the food pantry, to the home. And it's a really, it's an important part of what we do throughout the food system, but it's everyone playing a part in it. And the other thing that I heard that I wanted to talk about was portion control, portion sizes, really not even control, portion sizes. And what a simple solution that is, that we can all be part of and all participate. And it's, of course, it's a feature that we're excited about in the frozen food industry because we do offer portion sizes. It's a big part of what is in the freezer aisle, whether that's resealable packages, which we heard Roni and Neff talk about as well, or a portioned meal to begin with. It's part of the solution of food waste. So it's an opportunity for at each part of the food chain for us to play a part.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alison. Esther?
I think Representative Pingree's session really stood out to me because there was, she talked about sort of the importance of fun in the kitchen, and I think that's something that we think about a lot at FlashFood, because to have a hard problem that you're solving, I think it needs to feel really approachable, and the solutions that you need to incorporate in your home. I think, we're asking people fundamentally to change their behavior to make a difference, and for that to feel hard, or I think someone brought up, finger waggy earlier. I think it's really important for it to feel fun, and the idea of making soups and sauces and trying new things and experimenting a little for the sake of ultimately wasting less food, I think is really important for solving this problem. And so that one really stuck out to me. I thought it was, she's doing incredible work, but I think to have this conversation around the fun things you can try in the midst of the policy changes that, people like her are moving forward, I think is an important tone to strike.
Yeah, we need a little bit more fun in this movement for sure. I was really impressed. This struck me that we had 2 Congress members who decided that this was a summit that they wanted to speak at. What does that say to both of you?
One part of the policy conversation was endurable policy, right? And I think we need to engage both sides of the aisle on endurable policy, because that's what's going to make it durable for the long run and have it not be rolled back. And I think we saw from 2 leaders who definitely want to do that and want to reach across the aisle. And it's also what did we hear early in the beginning from Jamil? He said it's an all of society solution.
Right.
And we do that when it's bipartisan, right? And I think food waste, we have that opportunity with the food waste because it is enjoys such bipartisan support.
Thankfully, it's one of those things. Yeah. Esther?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think that bipartisan support is incredibly important. And I think, Rare brought this up earlier, that there's a lot of different cases and arguments to be made for food waste reduction. And I think having different, folks serving in elected positions talking about those various arguments based on who they're speaking with, right? It can change audience to audience. And there's folks on the MAHA side of things that would push because of the nutrition. Why let all this nutrition go to waste? There's folks on the agriculture side. Why let the resources and the farm work go to waste? And then there's the economic piece, which, consumers are really receptive to right now.
Sure. Do you both feel a responsibility to continue, sort of pushing the bipartisanship of preventing food waste, especially right now with this administration?
I think it's a real opportunity for our food industry and for the conversation on the Hill. I think there is more bipartisan work on the Hill than we often see from our living rooms on TV. There is work going on, and this is an important area and an opportunity for us to continue that.
At FlashFood, I think, we're an economically viable business, and I think our existence proves that food waste is actually an economical viable solution to go after. And so our responsibility is to be successful and to grow and scale our business to make, put the solution out in the world and have it solve a real problem. So in that sense, we're sort of policy agnostic, but I do think, we benefit from it being something that 90% of people agree with solving. And so to that extent, we want to keep that tone alive.
Right.
But I think, we're just going to keep doing our thing and scaling our business. And ultimately, the policy, I don't think, has a huge impact on us. But that being said, we, applaud all steps in the right direction.
Sure, absolutely. We've talked a lot about the private sector, and there's a huge responsibility there for the private sector. Do you feel like other companies, and are learning from, the Institute or learning from FlashFood, do you get that kind of camaraderie, people coming to you for advice who work in other businesses?
I think so, for sure. I mean, I think events like this prove that out. It's really fun hearing about progress that folks are making. There was a lot of winnow talk and the panel.
There's a lot of
winnow talk, and good for them. I just, we're all tackling this problem from different spaces, and I think hearing what makes one solution successful, or grabbing on my side of the world, a point of messaging that really lands, I think it doesn't hurt anybody, for sure.
That's great. Alison?
Yeah, I would add for our organization, for the American Frozen Food Institute, and for our members, sustainability is one of our core pillars, and that really lies with reducing food waste. And we think we offer such an amazing opportunity and an amazing solution. 83% of households purchase frozen and understand, 99% of households purchase frozen, but 83% understand that frozen food is a food waste solution for them in the home. So that's really a win-win for us. And how do we help consumers continue to understand that added benefit of frozen? Yes, it's convenient. Yes, it's tasty, but it also helps prevent food waste.
Again, I want you both to end with a call to action for the folks in the audience. Alison, you go first.
I'd say take advantage of your freezer. Whether that's freezing your own leftovers, we heard that a lot today, or using resealable, buying resealable packages in frozen, so you only pour out and eat what you're going to use, and then use what you're going to eat, and then save the rest. But use your freezer, take advantage of that, and be part of the solution, because it will take all of us to be a part of that solution.
Thank you. Esther, final word.
Embrace trying something new in the kitchen. Make some stocks, make some banana bread with those overripe bananas. Just use your herb stems. That's one we hear from chefs a lot, is you can just put those in whatever you're making. You don't need to throw them out. So that's mine.
Preventing food waste makes us creative, and that's what I like about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you both so much. Thanks for this partnership. It's been so great to work with all of you. Please give them a round of applause. You can stay seated. Such a great morning. I am so pleased with all of the speakers who have been with us today and all of the moderators. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you to our partners, UNEP, ReFed, Apeel, the American Frozen Food Institute, and FlashFood. Round of applause. I love our venue. Please give WNYC a round of applause. Great performances has made us all feel full and nourished and, joyful from the food that they've been creating. Give them a round of applause. The Food Tank team, including my co-founder Bernard Pollock, our staff, Alina Seeley, Kenzie Wade, Jessica Levy, Jared Kaufman, Emily Payne, Elena Morris, Grace Kellogg, Amy Howe, Haven Worley, and the amazing volunteers who've been helping throughout the day. And finally, thanks to all of you for coming. We really appreciate it. I love seeing a full house, and thanks to everyone online who has been watching and commenting. So give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you so much. Go enjoy that reception.